But I look at 5 key recipes, and these are pillars of my leadership. And number one is we're going to love one another. We're going to treat each other with love. And I mean, there are many types of love. I have a love for my wife, my kids, and all that, but I also have love for those people around me. I choose that. That is a choice that I make as a leader to love those people around me. And someone says, well, doesn't that make you a weaker leader? I said, no, it makes me a stronger leader in reality, because what people realize is that, manipulation is not leadership, in my opinion. Manipulation is self-centered, but leadership is different. For you to do something because you want to do it, because you understand why you're doing it, and you hear the word thank you, makes you want to do it again, right? So love one another. I would say I am regional vice president of the Central Region for Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, specifically responsible as general manager for the Fairmont Scottsdale. So however you want to say that.
Perfect. We've just let you say it, so I think we'll just carry on.
Okay, great.
So Jack, we're delighted to have you here. We've spoken to you conversationally just during project meetings and walking around the property, and you shared some interesting little anecdotes and stories with us. So we're really excited to delve deeper into that, and we always like to go back to the beginning of like how your career started and how you got into hospitality originally.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I'm truly the guy who fell into hospitality. My whole life, I thought I was going to be a professional football player at 5'9", 190 pounds. I was quite good, honestly, and maybe would have had a scholarship. I did have a scholarship at the University of Florida to play football. But, and at the age of 15, didn't know that I was finding my career, but needed some money to take girls out. And so I got a job washing dishes in a hotel, and then primarily a summer job. And then thought, well, this paid off. I made whatever it was pretty, not much, probably 75 cents an hour, probably something like that. And then summer ended, so I got out of the hotel business, and then was elected president of my school, which was kind of cool. And as the president of the school, you're responsible to put on something called the junior senior prom. So I went into a hotel. It was called Atlantis Beach Lodge in Cocoa Beach, Florida, where I grew up. My dad worked at Cape Canaveral, and went in and was talking to the director of catering and was booking this junior senior prom. And a big guy walked behind me and kind of stood behind me. It was a little uncomfortable, actually, and his name was Bill Hotelling, believe it or not, and he was the general manager. I didn't know it at the time. And after I finished kind of negotiating the deal for my junior senior prom, which was called Stairway to Heaven, I still remember it. That was the theme I came up with. That was a song back then. And after I got through, this big guy, about 6'5", and I'm 5'9", he comes out, he says, hey, could I talk to you? I said, sure. So I went in, and he says, I've just been listening to you for the last few minutes. Have you ever thought about going into the hotel field? And I said, oh, no, really not. I was a dishwasher. But he said, well, if you ever do, please look me up. I thought that was pretty cool. So as things went on, I stayed in touch with him a bit, took on a couple of other odd jobs, but all primarily in people-facing jobs. My dad is Italian-American. He came over to the country when he was 2 years old, and my mom was French-Indian, and both of them had this delightful personality that was, to love people and to love on people. Anyway, fast forward, I don't know if you know this or not, but I didn't become a professional football player. Did not make it because I got hurt my senior year, and I lost my scholarship. Last game of the year. And it was really meant to be. So I called Bill Hotelling and said, I really kind of like the hotel business, and I've been working in it over the summers, and I was wondering if maybe you'd help me get into it. He says, well, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee now. Why don't you come up, work for me? So I went up there, packed my car, and scared to death, really never left home before. And I went to Memphis, Tennessee to work for Holiday Inns, and I worked 8 hours on the clock and 8 hours off the clock The 8 hours on the clock was to earn my $1.25 an hour, working the front desk. And at night, I learned how to do everything else in the hotel. I learned how to cook. I didn't get paid for it. It was 1974. The labor laws were not quite as tough as they were now, but it was my education. And my parents didn't have enough money to send me to school, so I truly came up through the ranks. And I remember that there were guys there who were interning who were from Cornell, one of the most famous hospitality schools in the country, and they would say, well, what school did you go to? And I would say, HIU. And they said, oh, really? I said, yeah. And they said, well, where is that? I go, well, it's in Olive Branch, Mississippi. Well, I've never heard of that. University of Mississippi? No, HIU, Holiday Inn University. And the reality is that I just had a knack for it. And at the age of, I did every job in the hotel. I became a food and beverage director. I was actually buying $3,000 worth of liquor a week in West Memphis, Arkansas as a food and beverage director before I could drink. I grew a beard to look older, and now I have a goatee to look cooler. Not sure either worked, but that's true. So I really learned the business from the inside out, and fell in love with it, and knew this is where I was supposed to be, and became an individual who was not afraid to try anything, and had a penchant for marketing, and also learned that I was one guy. And it required others to do the job. So that was a journey to be traveled. Lots of learnings for sure.
We hear that a lot, that so many people have worked their way up through the ranks in hotels. They started as a bellman or a doorman or whatever, and now they're operating the company or the manager of the hotel. It seems to be a kind of theme in the industry.
It does. Yeah. It's a little hard to do that now without an education, because now hospitality is a thing, right? I have a daughter who's in hospitality at Ole Miss, and so it is a thing that people do get educated in. But back then in 1974, there were a few schools, but they were few and far between to get hospitality education. So you could work your way up. And I still have people, even in my own hotel right now, that are working their way up, that have had some education. There are some things you can't teach. One is really how to develop a culture and a love for people and a love for hospitality. I think hospitality is being able to be welcoming even in the most difficult environments, right? So yeah, I worked my way up, and what that gave me was an affinity and a respect for every job in the building, right? I have cleaned rooms. I have, well, you'll laugh at this. We had shag carpet in some of the rooms back then, so we actually vacuumed and raked it so it would look good, right? That's
trying to get them back.
Yeah, I mean, and now it's coming. Yeah, short shag is coming back for sure in some.
You probably know. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I know, and but you were able to work your way up. I would just say that I became a general manager at the age of 22, which at the time was the youngest general manager in the world for Holiday Inns, and. Quite honestly, probably had a lot to learn, but mentally felt like I was there. What I really needed to learn was not so much the tactician side of the job. What I really needed to learn was how to lead people. And there are so many ways to lead them. And honestly, a lot of them are unhealthy. They're unhealthy for the person leading, and they're unhealthy for the person being led. There was a sign that the employees gave me that was in my office, and it was a street sign that said Jack Miller Way. The other side said, or no way. So that might tell you that I might have been a little authoritative in that time.
Where did you learn your leadership style from, or did it just come out of you because you were put in that position and you had to evolve it?
Well, it was something that had to evolve a bit.
Yeah.
I felt like, and I think most people feel this way, you get promoted to a job.
Yeah. And
you think you're getting promoted because you know everything, right? In reality, you probably know nothing, right? You were really good at your job that you were doing, but now you're in a new job. And what I've seen is that leaders tend to gravitate to what they know. So I was a food and beverage guy, so even when I became a GM, I gravitated to food and beverage, and you have to understand that isn't why you're the GM. And so at first I had to learn to ask questions and not be afraid to say I don't know. So to all the new leaders, I would say, raise your hand. In fact, as we talk about this today, I would just share with you some characteristics that I look for in people when I'm hiring them. And specifically, one of the things I had to learn was that I wasn't hired because I knew everything. I didn't have to know everything. What I had to do was hire people who were not me, which is hard for people to do sometimes, right? So I had to hire people who could complement my talents. And the other piece that I alluded to earlier is, even in those times when I was maybe a bit of a harsh leader, I did have an affinity for hospitality and people. And my leadership style did have to evolve. My second general manager's job, it isn't unusual for us to kind of do what I would call reviews, and we call them 360 reviews, where you hand out all these questionnaires to your direct reports, and they would then say something about you, and it would be anonymous. Well, I passed mine out knowing that I was going to come back. They were all going to come back. He is a 10 out of 10, the best of the best, incredible. And then you don't get the results, and you actually have to fly. At this time, it was a guy by the name of Ken Blanchard, who he wrote a book called The 1 Minute Manager. I mean, everybody kind of knows that book, right? And he was teaching the class. So I went to his class in Provo, Utah, I think is where it was. Never been there in my life. And I flew all that way to hear that I was an ass, pretty much. and I said, I could have stayed home and heard that, right? But it did happen. And so I had to become introspective. I was 24 years old at the time, and had already now ran a hotel, and now was in the process of opening a hotel. So what do you do at 24 when all of a sudden you realize, hey, wait a minute, so I'm not doing it right? Or people perceive me different than I perceive myself. So that began the transitional, what I would call metamorphosis of my leadership style. And people see me now, and I've received a lot of awards and congratulations. What they don't know is that, hey, you know what? I wasn't that guy, and I had to learn it. And there's a process, and actually there's a recipe to it, quite frankly.
So, and as part of that, did you evolve as the hospitality industry evolved too? Because I'm sure 1974 to now is a very different world.
So I was led by individuals who were very autocratic. When I was in the kitchen, I worked for a French chef. And I won't say exactly what he said to me on a regular basis, but I will just tell you that Hell's Kitchen, I lived it. And the reality is, it was that way at that time. You're right. You're 100% right, Ben. We tend to imitate our leaders, right? We tend to imitate what we see because we believe it's right. And as you're doing that, society was evolving. Everything's evolving, and if you stay the same, you really don't. You're unable to keep people. You're unable to. We approached individuals as if they were an infinite resource, and in reality, they are not an infinite resource. They are a finite resource. And the longer you keep them, the better trained they are. The longer you keep them, the more, the better they are at their jobs, and the happier your guest is. So ultimately, you do. So I had to learn that. I did work for people who were difficult to work with, and then as I began to, I'll say, mature, I realized that, wow, what if you began to look at people, one, as if they were a resource that needed to be nurtured, that needed to be loved on, that needed to be cared for, all those things that I liked. It's crazy how, if I said to you, hey, how do you like to be managed? You would tell me some great things, I'm sure. But then do you treat other people like that? So what I began to learn, probably around 24 to 28, I began to learn you need to start looking at others more importantly than you look at yourself. Because self-focus delivers, I mean, I gotta tell you, I was right all the time in my mind.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, as the evaluation crew of one, I was fantastic. But once you begin to listen to other people, you begin to realize, I can get better. And not everybody, that's the other piece. It also begins to give you an edge on others, because what you're doing as you evolve, you are passing a lot of people who have chosen not to evolve as fast as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what happened in my career. I started out as the youngest general manager in the company. At the age of 28, I became president of a company that was developing hotels. These very wealthy millionaires wanted a 28-year-old guy to take a piece of dirt and turn it into a hotel. And I was able to do that for 3.5, 4 years before they decided to sell it all. And it was really enlightening to me. But then after that was over, I had to get back into the hotel business again. I was in the hotel business, building hotels, but I had to also go back into managing hotels. So it is an evolution. I'd like to believe that I'm still not there yet, but I hope to be there one day.
So part of the recipe that you were saying, because I got curious when you said that, is part of the recipe that leading with the heart and leading very human-centric and treating people really like people. Is that some of the ingredients?
That's perfect. I'll expand on it a bit because we call those soft skills, right? And a lot of finance-driven individuals, accounting types, would say, well, it's all about the middle line. It's all about the middle of the statement. But well, yeah, okay, the middle of the statement is important. However, I would just tell you that soft skills have been proven to deliver exponentially results. And for an example, right now, I mean, I will give you the recipe as long as you promise not to tell anybody.
Yeah, no, we keep it quiet.
Yeah, good. So, I mean, for instance, the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess right now, I would tell you we've been voted the best place to work many years in a row. Our turnover is incredibly low, probably one of the lowest in the nation. Certainly one of the lowest in hospitality. And well, why is that? Well, I will tell you the soft skills work. We are also the #1 performing financial hotel in the world for Accor hotels in the world. So how is that? Back to the recipe. It is when you begin to look at others in a different perspective, meaning the world doesn't revolve, in my case, around Jack. What if you ran a hotel or a business as if the world really kind of revolved around the people who work there? You can still keep focus on what due north is. You can explain and you can lead to what due north is. I think you do have to be a visionary and you have to be able to explain that. But I look at 5 key recipes, and these are pillars of my leadership. And #1 is we're going to love one another. We're going to treat each other with love. And I mean, there are many types of love. I have a love for my wife, my kids, and all that, but I also have love for those people around me. I choose that. That is a choice that I make as a leader, to love those people around me. And someone says, well, you know, doesn't that make you a weaker leader? I said, no, it makes me a stronger leader in reality, because what people realize is that, you know, manipulation is not leadership, in my opinion. Manipulation is self-centered, but leadership is different. For you to do something because you want to do it, because you understand why you're doing it, and you hear the word thank you, makes you want to do it again, right? So love one another. Next is respect. We have, and I have learned this throughout my years, is that everyone deserves respect, everyone. And I've gone to bat for employees who have been mistreated by guests. I mean, guests that are paying $10,000 a night.
Yeah. And
treated someone in a way that was unacceptable. I've actually asked them to leave because they couldn't treat our people right. And when you do that for an employee, it's recognizable. That employee will not only understand that you respect them, that your love is real, right? And my mom used to tell me, hey, you know, I would tell her, I love you, Mom, and she would say, show me, don't tell me. And that's the reality. And so if you're going to adhere to these policies or to this recipe, you got to live it every day. I mean, I have 2,000 people who hear this, who hold me accountable to this culture every day. So I began to identify it and articulate it in these words. Love one another. We're going to respect each other. We're going to work together, right? I mean, it's very easy to repeat the hierarchy. Like, I'm the regional vice president, and the words after that now, in my mind, at the age I am now and the maturity I'm at now, is so what? what do you do? And it's real. I mean, it's real. So collaborate just means work together. As I was coming over to your offices, I was riding up in the elevator with somebody, and we were chatting about our business. And you would say, based on what we're talking about, we were talking about our latest promotion, Pumpkin Fest, and how it was doing, and we were talking about the financials. And you would say, "Oh, he must have been talking to one of the managers." No, I was talking to a bellman. Because what happens when you collaborate across the organization, when you love across the organization, when you respect each other across the organization, then the organization becomes a little flatter, which means we're not this big pyramid that you've seen your entire life. So love, respect, working together, collaboration, and then joy. And I had a hard time figuring this one out because the hotel business makes me happy. Well, what if you worked in an environment where you said to people, you're going to come to work with joy in your heart. I'm not going to steal it. You're going to be happy sometimes. You're going to be sad sometimes. I'm just going to create an environment that lets you keep the joy inside your heart. And I should never try to steal that. You may disagree with me. You may not like what I say. Well, that's going to make you unhappy. Or you may love what I say. You got a raise, yay! So you're now happy. But who you are should not be predicted by how I treat you. Who you are is who you are. I had to learn that. I'm not in the position. At one point in my career, I thought I could fix everything. Right? I can't fix anything. But you can if I give you the opportunity to, especially when it comes to yourself. And so those 4 words were then created. Those words were part of our pillars. And I began this almost 30 years ago because they help you. Everybody can remember 4 words. And then I added 1 word, and that is everything is laid on a foundation of trust. And that seems so easy. I mean, you trusted me to show up today, and I did. But trusting in business, you'd be surprised how many people don't trust each other because, for a lot of reasons. So we explain that trust is given. We give it. I go to every orientation for our employees, and I speak about the pillars. I speak about the culture, why we treat each other a certain way. And ultimately, that trust is the foundation for who we are. And that brings up kind of another idea, and I would just share with you. You were talking about kind of how this all happens, right? The leader has to be available to define the culture, to direct the path, and then to carve out anybody who doesn't belong. And there will be people that don't belong. And you have to prove that the culture is bigger than the person. And that is the leader's job. And so when I look at any of the places that I've run since I began to adhere to these kinds of what I call soft skills, very definable expectations, I have made it a point to be in every orientation that if I'm in town, I am in the orientation. So every new employee hears it. If they don't hear it from me, they see a video where I'm explaining it. And I don't ever talk about rules. I say, in fact, my first speech, the very first words out of my mouth is, well, you've gotten all the rules. Now I'm just going to tell you how we're going to work together. And I explain my concern for who they are and what they do. And I explain those 5 pillars. So what I say is that what takes a year to build in terms of a culture takes 30 days to tear down. And in reality, all it takes is me not living the culture as the leader, and it's gone immediately. I don't know if that answered your question.
Wow, that was amazing. I'm going to bookmark this, and I'm going to re-listen to it myself. I think that was incredibly said. And I think just our experience, like Gwen was saying, when we come to the property, there is just all of it we feel. And that's why we were just so excited to talk to you about this, because we were like, we got to get that recipe, and we got to really understand what's behind that. And what fascinates me too is you're saying this is something you did so many years ago, and I feel like now is where people are becoming more aware of it. Now people are thinking like, oh yeah, I can actually lead with the heart and make money. You've been really at the forefront of that, and that's really showing the culture, and you can feel it. people that come across you, it doesn't matter who is on the property, the way they look at you, the way they speak to you, that's exactly mirroring what you just said. And yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
So I will tell you, you've said the word heart a couple of times. I truly believe you either have a heart for hospitality or you don't. You have a heart for people or you don't. And in these orientation classes, I actually, I say, I'm also here to tell you that after this orientation, sometimes I call the leader of the orientation and I say, oh, by the way, person number 3, they're not going to make it. And I tell them that. And I say, because think about this for a second. If your heart can't be impressing me for 45 minutes that I'm in this room, how are you going to do it the other times? And I wasn't educated at Cornell. I wasn't educated at all the fine schools, Ivy League schools. I didn't learn hospitality that way. I learned it from the ground up. So I can kind of smell out BS. And this is not a business that you can BS because it's going to challenge you on a regular basis. So the heart is very important. Early in my career, I thought if I showed emotion, it would make me look weak. So my team will tell you, hey, you can make him tear up. Just ask him to talk to you about what he did for us during COVID. and so you had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to show, it's one thing everybody says, we're one big family. We're one big family.
Yeah.
But are you really? Are you
Yeah.
really? Or is it just a speech?
Right.
So COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
We did not close. We weren't making any money, but we didn't close. We kept out of, let's say, 1,000 full-time employees. We kept them on their benefits. We took care of them. We did run out of money eventually, but they never knew it because we found ways of making money. We created a drive-in movie where our local community began to support us. But also during that time, we said, until you don't need it, we're going to every Wednesday and Friday, we're going to have meals for you to come and pick up. We served 36,000 meals
Wow.
to our employees. So when we did need them back, we needed them back Memorial Day of 2020. We were sold out. Everybody from California was showing up
I
Yeah.
remember.
to play golf and to jump in our pools and to find some relief. I needed 400 employees virtually overnight. I had a Zoom call. I invited everybody to it, and I said, I need you. The next day, 400 people showed up.
Wow.
Even at that time, they could have earned more money by staying home because by that time the checks had kicked in. And so these are the soft skills. That's how they
Yeah.
pay off. So we gained enough market share in 2020 that no other hotels have been able to catch us since. And how did it happen? Well, it happened because, number one, we didn't give up. We said, we're going to make this work. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do what we need to do to make it work, and we did it through COVID. But the story I really wanted you to hear was, hey, you know what? It's okay as a leader, in my case, to show my passion, to show my emotions. And I don't think it makes you weaker. I think it makes you stronger.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's so nice to see. And what's interesting for us is that we've got in relative terms, a very small company, but we've always had that kind of ethos ourselves. But for me personally, and it's probably one of my weaknesses, I haven't been able to marry the two together because I think sometimes trust gets in the way, or I'm a bit stubborn and it's like, oh, I can do it myself. It's that typical, oh, I can do it myself better than you can do it, and it doesn't give the employee opportunity. But what's interesting is that somebody could listen to your 4 or 5 pillars and go, oh, they all sound a bit kind of like wishy-washy and lovey-dovey, yet the result is, like you said, you're the #1 hotel in America, or the most revenue Fairmont in the world. I mean, that's incredible. So clearly it has enormous benefits, but it's not that masculine approach that we hear so much about today. So
Yeah.
it's a contradiction from what we're hearing.
Yeah, I think I would share with you that, generally speaking, it's maybe a bit unorthodox to some people. I mean, but I would just share with you that it has been proven now. You can actually find studies online where the soft skills actually do perform at a higher rate of pay. For instance, I'll just share Nordstrom. The old Nordstrom. I can't really speak to today's Nordstrom, but let's say Nordstrom 20 years ago was really kind of one of my models that I looked at, because they they believed in soft skills. They also believed in incenting their salespeople. And I remember, I might be off a bit in the number, but their salespeople were 20 to 25% more productive than any competitive set that they could look at. So why? Why was that? I would argue that because they felt valued. Why do people smile at you when I'm not around? Well, they smile at you because they're vested in you wanting to come back to that resort. They're vested in your experience because they understand that they're valued. So I would share that there's probably much more data now that says that leading with the heart is actually more profitable. So specifically, we are the #1 hotel financially for Accor hotels and resorts. Well, does that sound like a big number? Well, I'll tell you, it's 5,400 hotels globally. That's globally. But even more, I think, critical is to share with you that when I got here in November of 2009, the hotel was probably 4 months away from bankruptcy. And I didn't know it until I got here, moved my family here.
Wow.
And the owner said, hey, by the way, we love you. But they said this. They said, we're dangling the keys. And I didn't know what that meant, right? But it meant that, hey, we're going to give the keys back to the bank. In addition to that, if you think that wasn't bad enough, the Wall Street Journal did an article that said we were the noose around the ownership's neck, that they had to jettison us. So, I mean, I guess what do you do, right? At that time, there was only 270 employees left out of 600. Now we have over 2,000. And what do you do? So I think it was the Mets. They went last to first, right? You know, they always talked about the baseball team, the Mets. You know, yeah, they were the worst to the first.
Yeah.
And so we were not the #1 hotel in the world. So we began to create, first and foremost, this recipe. So let's create a culture. Can you imagine that the employees were pretty downtrodden at that time? They didn't know that bankruptcy was imminent, but they had watched their friends get laid off. They had watched people go away that they cared a lot about. So it was a down time. I began working on the culture. We began to rebuild the culture, and then we wanted to reintroduce the hotel to the community. We went out. We started Christmas at the Princess, which, as you well know, is pretty big these days.
Yeah.
And the Today Show, you know, they interviewed me and they said, this is New York, Coda. And it was like, okay, so this, how Christmas saved the princess, Jack, tell us about it. And I said, well, what hotel do you know that's got 3 trains, 2 ice skating rinks, and at that time, 10 million lights, right? So in reality, it wasn't always the way it is today. So what happened? I believe we laid a foundation of a culture where people were respected. They were treated in a way that made them want to stay. We began to not only, I mean, you can't be so one-sided that you're just building a culture, but we also began, from a marketing perspective, delivering a message that if it's happening in Scottsdale at the time, it's happening at the Princess. We began to create events. So there is a recipe of marketing and sales and all the, I don't want to sound like, well, yes, just love on everybody and everything's perfect. Yeah. Well, no, it isn't.
Right.
But that is part and parcel to how do you, once you get people in through marketing, how are they treated? Because I didn't want them to stay just once.
Yeah.
I wanted them to come back and be loyal. I don't know if that explains it.
Oh, absolutely.
So passion, heart, they all run together.
Yeah.
And I love it.
And then one thing I was really hearing as well, because when you said when you come into a place like that and you didn't know about it, it's a lot of self-trust, grit and resilience I'm hearing in there, because to have the vision of where you want to go, but the day-to-day didn't feel like that. And I'm sure it was really hard. Yeah. So I want to touch a little bit on that memory. Yeah. What drove you at the time? What did give you the confidence? What moments did you not give up? Because I'm sure there were a lot of moments where it was hard to think, does this really work? Does it not work? What's been driving you? It's a
great question. Because I believe grit and resilience are the keys to success. And so I would share, I'm going to share a couple stories with you. I don't know if we have time.
You carry on.
I would just share a couple stories. First of all, think about this. I mean, I grew up in a middle-class family. Found out at the age of 17 I wasn't going to be able to go to college. Had no idea what I was going to do. And had found a mentor without even knowing it, Bill Hotelling, who I still stay in touch with. He's 86 years old and he lives in Italy. But I asked him one time, when he and I were having a drink together, I was a GM sitting next to him at the bar. And I said, Mr. Hotelling, I didn't call him Bill. I still don't call him Bill. Mr. Hotelling, I have a question for you. How is it that all these guys from Cornell are still not general managers and I am? And I didn't go to school. And he says, well, first of all, you were the guy who had no choice. Like, what were you going to do? These guys, you know, they had educations and everything else. But he says, that's not the reason. I said, well, what is the reason? He said, because you weren't educated in this business, when I told you from my experience what to do and how to do it, you did it. So everybody else thought they could figure it out better, and they took the circuitous path. Jack, you took a direct line. And that direct line was true. It was hard. I can just say, I mean, I had virtually no money, not to mention that I worked crazy hours, no girlfriends, no friends, basically, and focused on it. That is the grit part. You got to believe that it's not easy. But I always believed in myself. I believed I could do it. And I was blessed to be raised in a family that kind of taught me you can do anything as long as you're willing to work for it. So now, how does that help me now? Well, I actually, throughout the course of my career, was doing things on a regular basis that I wasn't trained to do. I opened 17 hotels. No one ever trained me to do that. But I listened and I learned quickly, and I used previous experiences to help build on that experience. So when I got here, something really strange. So I was actually forced into the brand. Our brand is Fairmont. Typically, a hotel like the Princess would not go to an outsider. I had been with Intercontinental Hotels as a vice president for 30 some odd years. So I was in the luxury division, but Fairmont didn't want to hire me. But the owners wanted me because I was running their hotel in Miami, and I had turned that around. So it was really hard because I got forced down the brand's throat. They didn't like me.
Right.
And the owners were like, well, we love you, but we may be running out of money.
Oh, wow.
So I got 4 kids and a wife who are looking at me like, hey, why'd we come here? So, look, I will say this. I'm a man of faith. So, man, I got down on my knees and said, hey, look, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. And I wasn't. And one morning, I came up with the idea of this idea that why don't you reintroduce the Princess to the community, because there were other competitors that had been there. They were newer. They were more on the minds of the customer that, when you build something new, people try it. Yeah. And then the Princess had kind of sat back and said, we're the Princess, right? And I would just share to everybody, you're never the Princess, you're never the Queen, you're never the King. At the end of the day, that may be your title, but if you don't keep yourself in front of the customer, they're going to forget about you. And that's kind of what happened. And I remember we also had this attitude that, we don't do any meals less than $150. And we're going broke, right? So maybe we'll do meals for $149 or something. So it was hard. So I got a lot of flack from the ownership. You got to make payroll, and I got a lot of flack from the Fairmont people saying, we really didn't want to hire you anyway. So we created Christmas at the Princess. I went out and bought a $90,000 Christmas tree that was you've seen it probably by now. But it's computerized, and I grew up near Walt Disney World, so I was a Disney-esque guy anyway. I loved Walt Disney and all the things he stood for. When he built a park, he cared about what you walked on. He cared about what you smelled. So if you go into Main Street in Disney World, you will smell popcorn for a reason. It's purposely. You will walk on cobblestone purposely. You will hear American nostalgic music purposely. So I kind of understood that. And so we created Christmas at the Princess. One lady said, when she introduced me, she says, I don't know his name, but I just call him Walt Disney of Arizona. And that was the neatest compliment I ever got. So we created that event, and people began to show up at our property again. They began to eat in all of our restaurants. I think the way to a customer's heart is through his stomach. And we created these great restaurants with Richard Sandoval, Michael Mina, celebrity chefs in their own right. And we began to change not only the culture of our employees and the environment, but we began to change what people thought of us. If it's happening in Scottsdale, it's happening at the Princess. One of the other things that I stole from Walt Disney was the fact at Disney World, every night at 9 o'clock, they shoot up fireworks. So to make sure people remembered us, every Saturday night at 9 o'clock, all summer long, we shoot up fireworks. Wherever you live, if you live near the hotel, you will know. I know it's a fact because on my phone I have Ring, and notoriously somebody will say, "Has anybody heard those shots, those gunshots?" And then eventually, the first comment back for somebody who lives near us will say, "Yeah, that's the Princess. They do it every Saturday night at 9 o'clock." And so we began to be known as the place to be, as the center of Scottsdale, even though we're really the center of maybe North Scottsdale. Now I just heard somebody say the other day, if it's happening in the Valley, it's happening at the Princess. Again, beginning to say, this is special. But it wasn't always that way. Going back to resilience and grit, when you fail, you fall forward.
Right.
And I can just tell you, that's what I've done. I've been able to fall forward my whole life. Not because anybody caught me falling forward, but because I chose to fall forward. I think personality, attitude, passion, all those things are choices you make, right? My driver just said to me, "Hey, how's your day?" I said, "It's fantastic." Now, truth be told, it's been a little rocky, right? But I choose for it to be great.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, just find, if you really want to know if someone cares how your day is, when they say that, "How you doing?" and just call them back and say, "Oh, my neck hurts, my back, or this hurt," I'll begin to tell me, "Hey, I'm a little worried about paying the light bill." Hey, good to hear it. And they don't right? The reality is, I don't have time for your problems. I got my own.
Right.
So grit, resilience, and belief in what we could accomplish. And we began to be successful. So all of a sudden, Fairmont's going, "Oh, we kind of like this guy." And the owners are realizing they don't have to go bankrupt because we're making the mortgage every single month.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, momentum began to happen. So it was tough. It was tough. There were certainly moments that I even doubted myself. Like, do you really think you can do this? And in those moments, I think you have to reflect and say, when have I had something really difficult in my life? I mean, in reality, you think you control everything. You control nothing. You just don't. I mean, the reality, you can kind of control yourself, maybe. Maybe you don't get angry, or maybe that's true. But in reality, I had to work with a lot of things I couldn't control. Like, what if no one showed up?
Yeah.
People told me that summer would never work. You couldn't do promotions in the summer. And people told me you should close in the summer. I said, okay, no. But so we created Freedom Fest. We created these events that, I mean, I remember the very first Freedom Fest, Three Dog Night they played. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but it was a band from my era, the 70s, and you should know them. But you probably know the song, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. You probably heard that one. One is the loneliest number. Anyway, there's only 2 dogs left, I think. But so they're old. But they showed up, and no customers did, really. I mean, I spent $50,000 on getting them there in the summer. The chairs were so hot that we had to water them so people could sit on them. But eventually, I think maybe 1,000 people showed up, and I thought, oh, maybe I'm onto something. Now we do Freedom Fest, 4 days of concerts, and the reality is that we're sold out that entire time.
Yeah.
So you talk about resilience. A lot of people will dip their toe in the water.
Yeah.
I think when you dip your toe in the water, you'll never know just how much fun it is to swim. And that's the problem. Because if you have an idea and you're only going to dip your toe in the water, or you're only going to try it a little bit, well, how do you know? What if you had given it all? What if you had given it your all?
Yeah.
Could it have been? And so then that brings up the next piece, and that's taking risks and being able to take calculated risks that people go, "Gosh, you're such a risk taker." The reality is I evaluate risk really quick in my head. Like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I can get this or that, but I can still make it. So I think the reality is that grit, that means the ability to really get through it all, because I believe resilience is to take the hits say I'm still standing. It's okay. I can do this. And it has been difficult from time to time. By the way, it's never easy. The hotel business and hospitality in general is never easy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think what's so nice is that you've been there for so long, relatively, and you've built something incredible. And now we live in a culture where it's instant gratification, a quick flash in a pan, and I want success overnight. And I think we're programmed now to think like that because we see a few examples on the internet. Somebody became a millionaire overnight or had this success, but for most people that isn't going to be the reality. So it's, I was brought up in the UK, it was traditional and you worked hard and you worked your way up. And I sort of now am in that conflict between wanting almost the quick success, but then driven by, building something that's meaningful and long lasting. So it's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a fact. Think about our society. In the U.S., here's how you grow up generally. You become a high school junior. The questions everybody asks is, hey, what are you going to do when you graduate? What school are you going to? What school are you going to? Well, I'm going to this school. You go to that school. Then they say, what's your major? Right? So now you become a senior. Where are you going to work? You graduate. When are you getting married? You get married when you having kids. Yeah. Like, you're pushing me through life. You're too fast, man. Let me just be nuts. Let me just enjoy something, right?
Yeah.
And I try to preach that to my kids. Like, hey, probably dad didn't do what you should do. And that is take a minute. So we have this rule in our family. Once you graduate, and I have 3 that have graduated. One played football. He graduated. They've all graduated. And I said, take a year off. I don't care what you do. You just take a year off. And I have one that's now probably going to be a naturopathic doctor and an MD. I have one that's going to be, has done philanthropic work, but also does meetings all over the world. I have a commercial real estate developer, and none of them wanted to do that when they got out of school, and none were really educated for it, right. Unfortunately for me. So I would just share that it's okay not to know what you're going to do. It's okay not to know who you're going to marry. It's okay if you don't know when you're going to have kids. Those things are okay. Yeah. And I didn't have to live it because I didn't kind of go through all of that. But I think if I translate into what you just said, Penn, I would just say, hey, look, I didn't come to Scottsdale to be an overnight wonder. I came to Scottsdale to raise my family, first and foremost. There are 4 things that are critical to me, and every single one of my employees know it. Number 1, I love God. Number 2, I love my wife. Number 3, I love my kids. And number 4, I love my work. That's me. Now, I could give you paragraphs on any one of those, but you don't have time, or do you want to hear them? But because I know what's important to me, then I can look at you and say, hey, does that fit any of my 4 needs, right? I mean, like my 4 keys, right? So when work becomes crazy, and it does, then probably I'm not taking care of my wife and kids, meaning I'm not spending enough time with them. But by the way, I wrote it all down so I can remember, hey, wait a minute, I need to go back to this one and this one. I'm cooking for them tonight. And because I've been, on Sunday night I had a dinner with clients, and so I haven't been around. So, but because I remember that that's the order, I can get back to it. So that is a disciplined approach to the grit, to the grind, and to what does occur during the course of every day, really.
Well, I mean, that to me is also a very sustainable approach, and it's a very varied approach, because on the other hand, if you were just focusing on work and on that success, at some point that feels very one-dimensional. So I think to really focus on all those areas, and like you said, bringing balance into it, I think that's truly what makes you do that for such a long time, and also to reinvent and add new things to the offering. Because I think that's something I see too. It's not like you had the success with one thing and then the princess is doing the one thing. It's adding and adding and adding and reading and reinventing. And I think that's only really possible when you have all of those areas that you're in your life that feel supporting you to do that and have that vision.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. I think, by the way, I'm I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm certainly at an age and a time in my life where I look back, and to be clear, I didn't know this. This is a learned trait, and I have some young individuals who work for me now who I'm mentoring, and they've asked me these questions, and I say, you know what, I can speed this up for you, or you can be as stubborn as you want to be. It's up to you. But at the end of the day, look, if you can understand an affinity for people first, if you understand that, and then you understand the things that go with it, and I've never really liked this idea of life balance, because I think I love the hotel business and I love what I do. So I think of it more of a lifestyle. And my lifestyle looks like this. I know my priorities. I'm very clear on them. I'm a transparent leader. I'm very quick to say this is important, this is not important. And I'm also very disciplined in the things I've told you about. Like these soft skills, although they're soft, they're disciplined. There are things that happen that we have to still hold people accountable for. And when you don't, the credibility or the organization or the culture begin to unravel. So it is something pretty special. It doesn't exist everywhere. I do public speaking. I was speaking at an engagement, and there was a question from well, I mean, we know all about the princess, and how did this is crazy. It's so amazing, and it's really nice things, right? And I said, well, I got to tell you, it didn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen overnight. And you're right. We live in a society of instant gratification, and I can just tell you that that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Now, I do get instant gratification when I see a guest smile, when I hear about something that one of my colleagues did, my employees did, without me even telling them.
Yep.
Pretty incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the other night, I got a letter, and it made me so happy. A guest wanted to have a picnic, and they didn't have a blanket, right? And they were sitting out in the grass. One of my employees, who speaks no English, was driving a cart by. It just so happens he had in his cart, he had blankets. So he got a blanket out without saying anything to the guest, but laid it out on the grass and pointed to it and invited them to come over and sit down. It was pretty cool, right? It's the little things that now we've told that story multiple times, so now people can understand, hey, I want to make special happen myself. How do I do that? Well, in this case, it was a blanket. Didn't cost any money. It's a blanket. And it was just this idea of hospitality.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask what hospitality means to you, because that's it at its simplest form, isn't it? It didn't really cost anything. It didn't need 10 million lights around the property. It just needed somebody to recognize an opportunity to make somebody's day better.
So hospitality has always meant to me this welcoming, engaging event, whatever it is, right? So we all have the opportunity to be hospitable, right? And if you look through time, and if you look through different cultures, I mean, hospitality has all kinds of definitions around the world. I mean, no telling, but I mean, invite people into your house. I mean, you must do it, and they must, all those things. In my world, it's about creating an event that, for you, as my guest, that is going to be special to you. It's the personification of personalization. It's the ability to personalize your experience to where you will remember it. And in this day, people remember experiences long after they remember things. I mean, things are inanimate, but we have employees right now who are being requested by my guests by name, from guests who have been staying there year after year, and they said, for dinner, may I have this waiter, because I've had this waiter every year. This waiter is, and so how cool is that, right? I think hospitality is about creating a memory that you are not going to forget, that you are going to, I can remember when I did play football, I can remember going out in front of the fans before the game, in practice, and I mean in preparation for the game, and I can remember everything about it. Like I can remember the grass smelling. I can remember all of it, and I can almost close my eyes right now. And if I think about it, I will smell the grass. Right? That's what memories are.
Yeah.
Right? We've had people get married at the hotel. Now they have their grandkids at the hotel. They have their kids at the It's pretty incredible, right? So creating memories is what I think hospitality is about. And I learned hospitality, honestly, from my mom. My mom was the sweetest, kindest woman that I've ever known. And I just, she would hug me no matter what I did. And I probably deserved a lot worse than that. Now, my dad, on the other hand, he would make sure I paid for what I did wrong. But my mom would welcome people into our house. She would, she although she wasn't Italian, she lived with my grandfather and grandmother for long enough to learn how to make every sauce, how to make the gravy, you would eat too much, by the way, for sure. And I've never seen my mom sit down and have a meal with me. She was too busy making sure you had your meal. Hospitality is thinking of others first. Yeah. Hospitality is putting a smile on your face. Right. Hospitality, ever since I met you guys, I had an affinity for you. It wasn't just the design, it was how you approached it. Even when I said something really stupid, you didn't make me feel bad. Which was often, but you had that ingratiating smile. You always looked at me in the eyes when you spoke to me. You didn't look the other way. These are all part of being hospitable. And then, as you're doing right now, you're very kind, listening to me talk too much, probably. But the reality is that we don't listen enough. And hospitality is about listening, because if I listen long enough, I will find out what you like and what you need, and then I'll deliver it. And then I will have you forever as my guest. That's hospitality. Wow.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way. It is about how you make people feel. And you talk about memories. I think memories often created through emotion. That's why, sadly, everyone can remember what they were doing on 9/11, because there was such a strong emotion associated with it. We've been talking internally lately about a sort of psychological trick called the peak end rule, where typically, say, on a vacation or hotel stay, we'll remember the peak experience and the end. So making sure that the end of it is equally as valuable or important. So when somebody's leaving, it can be something small, but it's just enough to put the icing on the cake. So that, that was their last memory of it. Not, they've paid us the money now, let's get them out the door and get the next people in. Yeah.
So, I mean, in the restaurant business, we say, you know what? Make sure the coffee's great and make sure the dessert is great. The middle's the middle. Right. But make sure that beginning, ending are phenomenal. Yeah. And it's real, and it's the same way. Do you treat a guest on the way out after they spent, $10,000 or $5,000 or $5? Right. Do you treat them the same way on the way out that you did on the way in? Yeah. And that's a great point. Yeah. I think you really have to make sure everybody realizes that you want them back. You want them back, and they're going to remember that last piece. There's a reason why dogs are in our lobby. It's hard to be upset when that Labrador is looking at you with those loving eyes, and you're remembering your Labrador at home. And it is psychological, but it's all supposed to be. I mean, I never studied psychology, so I don't know anything about it. But I do know this. I do know what people love. I do know what people like, because they like the same things I do. By the way, not identical. There's a reason why you come into our lobby and there's a scent in the air. There's a reason for those. There's a reason for that dog being there, even though it looks like, there's 2 or 3 sometimes dogs in the lobby. I mean, people walk in and all of a sudden they feel like they're home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, and they're over there rubbing somebody's belly. Yeah. And some have had the worst day of their lives traveling. Travel's not easy these days, right? You know that. And so they get there, and all of a sudden we deflate that all the angst and all of the stress. Yeah. And stress is a thing. I mean, I have it too.
For sure. I mean, we have stayed at the Princess, but we're local. But when we come to meetings, the same thing. When I come rushed, I come into the lobby, the dog is there, and I'm just like, big breath and emotional support, and then we're ready for the meeting.
We go out the way to go through the lobby in case the dogs are there. We could walk another way, but I'm like, no, let's go through the lobby.
Always, you're right.
But it's just those little things. Purposeful. But you said it makes you feel like you're coming home, and it's so true. I don't know how to explain it, but it does feel like that. Even when we're visiting as a meet on a client meeting, we still feel like we're coming to somewhere special, which is quite hard when you're a brand and a massive hotel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reality is that as a general manager of a single hotel, you certainly have a responsibility to the brand. You have a responsibility for sure to the owners.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to that guest who walks through the door. And I have never seen yet when the guest is happy and you're making money for the owners, that the brand and the owners aren't all happy. So it just goes back to, if I take care of business, which is making special happen for you when you walk through my doors, you're going to spend money. You're therefore going to make the owners happy. You're going to begin to be loyal to the brand. You're going to make them happy. So the reality, it all boils back to how I treat you when you walk through my doors.
Yeah.
Hospitality.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think that's a perfect way to finish. That was really incredible. I think we could speak for hours.
Thank you. And I would just want to listen to you for hours. There's been so much wisdom in that. Thank you for sharing.
Yes,
It's
thank
been
you.
really
My
great.
pleasure. You
Thank
made it
you.
very easy, for sure. And it is a passion of my life. It's what I do. I mean, there are days, like you have, I bet, that are not great if you're looking on the outside in. But if you're looking on the inside out, you say, you know what, this is just this is just part of the way. And I know what the end result is. I get to write I tell my people all the time, you know that you're writing the last chapter. The last chapter is yours to write. So if you have a bad chapter, don't worry about it. You're writing the end.
Right.
So as long as you're writing the end, you got it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I do want to tell you one other thing,
Okay.
and that is that there's a movie called Remember the Titans. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I would love for you to see it.
I have not,
If
no.
you can get a chance, it's what will appear if you look at it. Denzel Washington's in it, so you know who that is.
Yeah.
So this movie, I think it was done in like 1980, and the movie is about this football team. It's a true story about this football team during the 60s civil unrest in America, right? So if you look at it, you will say, oh, this is a movie about, first you'll say football, right? Second, American football. Second, you would say it's a movie about civil unrest, black versus white. Then as you go along, you realize that it's actually a book about leadership. And it's actually, I mean, not a book, but a movie about leadership. It's about the fact that we are all essentially the same. We all have the same goals. We just have to explain how we're going to get there to each other. So I use that as a 2.5-hour lecture regarding how we lead people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying in there, there's many sayings in there, but one of them is attitude reflects leadership. So when you ask me about leading people, I have a responsibility to have an attitude that reflects throughout my organization. So when you say to me, gosh, you know, Jack, when I'm at your hotel, people feel so engaging and so warm and friendly. Well, I'm going to take some credit for it because I hope I'm that way. And because I'm that way, I hope they're that way. So the movie's called Remember the Titans. It's an older movie, but I promise you that you will see a lot of leadership skill sets in there. And you will also see stress, pressure, fights, outside influences, all kinds of things that we deal with every single day, not just in my world, but in your world. Right? So anyway.
Amazing.
It's on the list.
It's on the list, yeah.
It's on the
Alright, good.
list, yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.